I still got to do this bed. I mean, again, when you're growing in a space like this, the weeds will try to reclaim a bed so quickly.
Guten gardening, everybody. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of my Zone 5 garden here in southern Wisconsin. I'm going to show you what we've got growing so far here in the middle of June. Now, while my primary focus is going to be on that garden tour, there is something I want to talk about, and that is weeding.
Now we're going to start our garden tour today here with some of our garlic, which is looking great. And actually our hardneck garlic here in the back, you can see one of my favorite aspects of the hardneck garlic, which is all of these garlic scapes. Now they're not quite ready to be harvested. This one's pretty close. But the garlic scapes are coming in, which is fantastic. And I did grow a little bit more, and certainly more varieties of garlic this year than I have in the past, in part because we got a new selection of garlic from Woodprey Family Farms. And since garlic is one of those longer lasting products and we use it almost daily, this is something we wanted to have more of this season.
So you can see this year I've got garlic growing in the raised beds here, different raised beds in containers. And so we're hoping to get our biggest garlic harvest ever. We'll see how that goes. I did grow some soft neck in addition to the hard neck garlic though, so we're gonna be keeping an eye out for when we're ready to harvest those. Now to talk about weeds today, I'm gonna go to our primary in-ground gardening area. This is a 40-foot by 7-foot, so about 280 square foot space at the back of our property. So you can see one of the issues I'm having with weeds.
And actually, I'm going to start right behind the garden space where we have our onions growing, because this is an area where you can really see part of the issue with weeds in our back area that we're dealing with. You can see some of the varieties are common varieties. And so some of them, if you wanted to, you could eat. Does anybody know what this one is? I've actually done a video on this one. Some of them, if processed, and I'm not going to touch this stinging nettle, you can also make a stinging nettle tea out of. If you wrote down lamb's quarter, you got it right. But what you see here are some of the really common plants that grow, really common weeds that grow that can take over a space just so quickly. You know, about 2 weeks ago I came out here and I cleared out all these weeds, and unfortunately I haven't been able to get back in here and really take care of these weeds the way I want to. And so what I'm seeing is, even in our primary garden space, actually I'll go down to this end of our garden space because you'll see it down here as well. In addition to some beautiful plants in here, I've got a ton of weeds down in this area that seem to pop up almost overnight. And I actually just discovered a hole in my fence over here. And the reason I discovered that hole, looks like one of my S clips has fallen off, is because I saw some rabbits in here. So I got to take care of that, or else the rabbits will come in and they'll eat up everything. So I'm going to come back here with my onions and show you I've started to do some work cleaning out this area, cleaning out the weeds in here. I've got hours of work left to do.
Now, I believe all gardeners have to deal with weeds to some extent, but when you butt up to marshland, which is what I have right behind me here, an area that I can't do anything with, I have to deal with all of these plants out here going to seed and then spreading back into my garden. Now, there are a couple of different ways that we've handled our weeds here in the past, and most of the ways that we handle weeds have the additional benefit of helping to preserve some of the moisture in the soil, especially as we get farther into the end of June into July, when the rain seems to be a little less frequent than it is at this time of year, again, here in Zone 5, Wisconsin. And so the first step is going to be to take care of the weeds, to get the weeds out of the way. And when we're talking about weeds around, say, the onions that you just saw, I'm gonna have to get in there by hand because I can't really do anything. They're a little too close together for me to do anything else. So I get in there and I pull them out by hand. But for the main garden space, where I have a little bit more space in between most plants, I'll show you my way of getting rid of the weeds in the first place. And then we'll talk about trying to prevent them, and again, preserving some of the moisture in the soil.
Now my garden is kind of divided up into fourths here, and so I'm going to show you what I use here in this area of the garden that has some broccoli and some pepper plants. These are actually habanero peppers, and some tomato over here by the trellising. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to clear this out.
And I'm using one of my favorite tools. I've talked about this in previous videos. This is the stirrup hoe. And what I love about the stirrup hoe, I'm going to be careful with my plants here, is that I can get in here and knock these weeds off right at the top without moving a ton of my soil around. So I'm not having to come back through and re-level everything out. I've already taken care of the tops of these weeds, and it's super easy. I think this one cost me 25, 30 bucks. We certainly have other ones. You can get up pretty close to the plants as well. Get real close to my vegetables. If there are some that are right by the plant, maybe I want to come in by hand. But that is a really easy way to knock these weeds down. You see how easily I can work through this area. All right, so this is all pretty much the way I want it to be. I have to get plenty more of these weeds out of here, of course. Just like so. Now what I could do is just repeat that process every week or week and a half or so. As new weeds come in, I get in there and I clear them out. And I've done that in the past, and there may be some parts of the garden where I end up just completing that process over and over again. That's not going to help to keep any of the moisture in, which is something that I talked about earlier. Now there are plenty of other options for what you can do. We got a double shredded mulch a couple years ago. It wasn't too expensive. Actually, it was on the cheaper end of mulches. And from a local company, we got some double shredded mulch, and we spread about an inch thick layer across our garden space, and that made a huge difference. And it was double shredded, and it actually decomposed pretty quickly. So that's one of the things you can do. In the past, we've also spread a fairly thin layer of hay across the surface. Hay does a great job of holding moisture in. I mean, that's why our root stout bed doesn't even really need to be watered, because over the course of the season, it captures rain really well. Hay or straw works really nicely as a mulch. One thing with hay, you do want to make sure it's one of the later cuts if you can, to try to prevent additional seeds, because that can be problematic as well. But today, instead of hay, I'm actually going to be putting down a thin layer of grass. We just mowed yesterday. I've got some fresh grass in here, and I'm going to be spreading this out in a thin layer. Now, I don't want to make this too thick, although to be fair, the plants are really nicely established now, but I don't love the matting that happens or can happen with grass. I don't have this mulched up or anything like that. I just have a standard mower, but we found that grass does a really nice job also trying to keep that weed presence down. And I am going to show you this just over the smaller space here in the garden. And I'm just going to create a thin layer around my plants. Again, I'm not trying to do anything except help hold moisture in. There we go, just like that. Help hold moisture in and keep the weeds down, because if I can prevent that additional piece of work, and I've talked about this before, but gardening takes a good bit of efforting, a good bit of work out here. And if you're adding work to yourself by constantly having to come take care of weeds, as much as I find taking care of weeds to be cathartic to a point, I have other things that I need to get done as well. And what I'm spreading out right now has only taken a small portion of one bag of our trimmings, our clippings. And what I typically do is, as I'm collecting the grass, I either put it in my compost or use it for something like this. And that is, again, going to help us out a lot.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge difference maker, because as I walk along here, you can see what I'm going to be dealing with if I don't do this. These tomato plants, I got some Roma. These are Roma here. I got giant crimson, the rare giant crimson down here. A lot of kale this year, a lot of broccoli, cauliflower, or parsley right along here. But you can see how much the weeds are trying to really navigate into my garden, and I want to do whatever I can to prevent that from being a big issue. Again, I just cleared this out a week ago, and I've got bigger weeds that are going to come in. And the other piece of this that I think is so important to remember It's, you know, I'm looking at my onions in the back there, but the weed competition means smaller vegetables overall, smaller plants. And I want these to be successful. Oh, you can see the rabbits came and ate a couple of these are butter beans. Ate a couple of the plants right off the top there. Oh, I'm really excited for this. Let me show you this real quick. These are Romanesco broccoli here. The Romanesco, I don't know if you've ever seen them in the store, but they're ones that I say look like a math problem. They're super cool looking. But you can see how even, I mean, my peppers over here, you can barely see them because all this lamb's quarter here, that's all lamb's quarter, is just spreading so much. And as edible and delicious as I find lamb's quarter to be, that's not what I'm trying to grow in this part of the garden.
So even if until I mow again, I have to miss part of our garden space, part of it covering over here, I'm definitely going to hit this corner of the garden with that grass to make a big difference. And the primary reason why I'm not using hay right now
is because now that my root stout is taking off, you can see our potatoes are coming through. There's some mushrooms in here too. That's not a bad thing. But my potato plants are coming up through here. And so pretty soon I'm going to need to use the hay that I have to really stack up here to pile up a little bit more, like down at this end.
So the area where we've just come from on this tour, this is our main garden area where I'm doing the weeding, a lot of that work. I come around my house to the root stout bed, and up this corner we've got our longest raised bed of potatoes. But before I move around to there, right behind my house in a fairly shaded area, I've got some more brassicas growing, broccoli, collard greens. These collards are looking really nice right down in here. And a lot of, I believe this is called prickly lettuce, wild lettuce. Apparently this is related to the dandelion plant based on a brief amount of research. But again, these are more weeds that come in on such a quick basis. You see, they're really easy to pull up, but the root structure just really connects those plants together. Oh, such a variety here. One I'm really in particular interested in, though, the prairie blush. Absolutely love the prairie blush. And our Baltic rose potatoes. Everything's looking so nice. You know, a lot of these seed potatoes came in from Wood Prairie Family Farm this year. Some of the seed potatoes are ones that we kept over from last year. You see how deep the taproot goes on some of these. I really got to get that weed competition out of here for sure. You know, these beds haven't seen as much in the way of weeds as some of our other beds, although I will say this is where we had some strawberry spinach infestation a couple of years ago that I've worked really hard to get rid of. Now I'm actually right beside that potato bed here by some of our grapes. Really hoping for some grape success this year, some really good grapes. And right behind me as well, in addition to the grapes, if I stand out here, you can see the grapes all along here. But in addition to the grapes, I've got our gooseberries. The gooseberries just happen to be one of my favorites. You can see, once again, our branches of the gooseberries are loaded down. And then our black currants already starting to turn colors a little bit in here, but these are going to be loaded down as well. Boy, you want a bush that produces a ton. These currants are phenomenally productive. You can see the potential here for grapes underneath here. I actually saw, yep, the bird is up there. I don't know if you can see the tail of the bird. I didn't know there was a nest up there the other day. That is a mourning dove. That's the tail end of a mourning dove. But I was pulling something out of here and I shook this structure and that mourning dove flew out there, scared me. I'd say these creatures definitely have the tendency to scare. There's no doubt about it. All right, I got some cauliflower. That's our red Russian kale right there. Again, I grew a lot of kale this year. For any number of reasons. We use it a lot in smoothies, etc. The kale is also something that lasts for such a long time, continues growing here in Zone 5, Wisconsin. Here's a plant I haven't planted in a couple of years. Quickly, you pause the video and you type what you think it is, because I'm going to say the name here in a second. This is borage, and I don't have any quite far enough along. You can see it's spread out here as well. I don't have any that is flowering yet. But borage is such an interesting plant. It's a real self-seeder. It's got these beautiful blue flowers. The taste is so good. This is just like cucumber. Oh, it's got these little prickly pieces to it. Man, it really tastes like I'm eating cucumber. I think you have to get past the prickliness of it because it doesn't look like something that you'd want to eat, but it tastes so good. And, you know, again, I haven't planted it in a couple years because it just spreads self-seeds so quickly. And I don't want it really everywhere, even though finding it, it's one of those garden surprises that I talked about in an earlier video that, to be honest, I kind of enjoy because I love the taste. Well, you can see where I am now. I've walked along the western side of my house, so you can see the grapes here that I was just underneath, some of the berry bushes, all of our potatoes here. We've had a kiwi plant now this is year 6. This is as firm of a stem as I've seen. Like, this is as old as it's gotten. We've seen some flowers. Last year we saw some flowers finally, but we still haven't gotten any fruit off this at all. Again, this is supposed to be a plant, this particular variety, that we're able to, what's this? I think this is the flower that's going to open up. I come out and I check this thing all the time. I just really want to see something get produced off of here, if possible. Look, there's a couple of them here. So if we can get a fruit off of here, I think that would be the coolest thing ever. You see it right there? Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Again, it's supposed to only need one plant, this particular variety, which would be pretty cool to grow a kiwi in Zone 5, Wisconsin. By the way, this is my favorite spot in our entire garden. I love this archway so much. I love the grapes that we've trellised over top. I love to stand underneath here. It almost protects you from the rain. It leads out to our front garden space. We've showcased this self-seeding red lettuce that's just been so delicious for us. I did come in and I planted some more bush beans in here. The bush beans that I got for free, the seeds I got for free from our community garden spot. You can see them right down in here, some more bush beans. So hopefully those will all be coming up soon. You know, we've got a lot growing here in our garden space, in our green stalks, etc. I've got a couple more beds here that I just tilled up. I'm ready to plant. Right here in the front space, I've taken out the weeds. I still got to do this bed. I mean, again, when you're growing in a space like this, the weeds will try to reclaim a bed so quickly. And I haven't done anything with this bed yet. So, you know, once I take care of it, it's going to look just like these beds, or the bed here where I've got more broccoli growing, some more Romanesco broccoli, kale. That's our red Russian again right there. And you can see another reason right here. This is where I would definitely need to spread some of that grass, because this is all eventually a really edible plant. This is purslane right down in here, but purslane will take over everything. Now, it is an easy plant to take care of, and I can come through again and scrape it out. But if I had to try to pull these out over and over again, I'll eat some of it, I'm sure, but still, that could end up being an absolute nightmare. Well, there's a lot more that I could talk about. I've actually done a recent video where I talked about what was growing in our green stalks. So that's our previous video. You can check that video out if you haven't done so already. So I don't need to spend too much time here, but I think this would actually be a really cool place to end, right where we started, or right near where we started, because I haven't shown you two things. One would be our snap peas. And I have a couple different varieties. I just filmed a video yesterday when this particular pea was probably half the size it is now. They grow so quickly. You see all my peas here, and I've got some, let's look in here, there they are. Some purple ones as well, which taste so good. Purple, yellow, and I should have some green ones in here. I just got to find where they are. But I noticed this is super cool. Let's come down here. I think, as I look at how these leaves develop and pop out, I think this looks like an insect of some kind. I don't know, almost the shape of a praying mantis in a way. Super cool how they develop, how they come out, almost alien-like in nature. And I have to show you this potato area. I've got 4 containers of very vigorous growing potatoes here, 4 varieties that I'm not going to talk about today, but 4 of our favorites. And then our Sharpo Una and Sharpo Mira potatoes in our keyhole raised bed, which I am so excited for. The Sharpo Miras are phenomenal, and this is our first year with the Sharpo Una variety. Now there's plenty more I could show you that's growing here. Our raspberries are starting to look like berries finally. There's a whole lot more that I could talk about, but I think that's where I'm going to end it today. I hope that our conversation around weeding and what we're using here to cover the ground to mulch things in a little bit is useful. I think there are definitely some pretty inexpensive ways to do the mulching that'll prevent some of the problems with weed development in the future, and certainly again help to preserve some of the moisture in the soil, which I would consider to be really important. And I talked about this, but only briefly. Every single plant that grows in the same space as the vegetable that you want to grow is going to compete for nutrients with your plant. And so not taking care of the weeds is going to end up resulting in a plant that's not as healthy or not as good of a producer as you want. And so that's why I would say it's important to stay on top of it. And I know nobody likes to show off the weeds in their garden. I know that's certainly not a big focus for people who put their content on YouTube, but that's the reality of gardening, and it's something we have to address. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's video and found it useful, and if you did, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.